if you're one of the millions of Americans impacted by coronavirus, maybe you've lost your job, maybe you've been laid off, which is essentially the same thing, uh, and you need that $1,200. Well, there's a chance that you will never get it, even if you're eligible. Why? Well, it's because President Trump's Treasury Department has just given the banks, your bank, the ability to take that money from you and give it to your creditors. Now, this was a great report in the American Prospect by David Dayen. Now, he writes that the direct payments authorized under the CARES Act are authorized to be intercepted by your banking institution in order to pay outstanding debt instead of course, what it was intended for, which is helping people survive, get food, supplies, pay bills, pay rent during this pandemic. Now, Dan noted that, quote, legally speaking, the banks have the right to offset any deposits to pay off delinquent loans, overdraft fees, or any other charge. So now that includes bank overdraft fees, right? So if you've overdrawn it all because you haven't been getting income or anything like that, well, the bank can take your $1,200 and just say, that's ours now. Thanks. Appreciate it. Thanks for banking with us. Wow. Now, he also writes that banks have more immediate access to coronavirus checks by virtue of having them deposited into accounts at their institutions. They're also in the front of the line for repayment of debts ahead of other private debt collectors. So again, if you have that overdraft, that goes to it first and then whatever bills, and then maybe you'll have something left over. Maybe. Now, Dan also explains how this came to be, right? Now, Congress had explicitly exempted the one-time stimulus payment from collection under the CARES Act for federal debts. So, for example, if you're defaulting on your student loans, well, then you'd still be able to be eligible to get it. Or if you owe back taxes, you'd still be able to get it. Basically, all of that is exempt except for child support, which I guess makes sense, right? Now, Congress, Dan writes, did not extend this exemption to private debt collection, and notes that the payments are defined as tax credits and not federal benefits, which make them subject to garnishment, in which a debt collector that wins a judgment in court can seize anything of value held by the debtor. Now, you might think that, oh, I have my money in a credit union, so it'd be fine. No, credit unions can do it too. So, and if you're unbanked, well, then you've got to wait for a check that could take up to 5 months to get here. So that's not a good solution either. And so you might think, well, okay, look, this is obviously terrible, right? For the people who have an outstanding debt and are going through an incredible time, might even have that outstanding debt because of the coronavirus outbreak. Well, you would think that they would want to protect this, right? I mean, they need the stimulus. The whole point is to make sure that people can survive. So they had to have, now that they know that they would do something, right? They couldn't have just approved this. No, they did. They approved it as is, and they don't want to change it. In fact, Dan writes, quote, Congress gave the Treasury authority under Section 2201H of the CARES Act to write rules exempting the payments from private debt collection. But the Treasury Department, headed by former Goldman Sachs executive Steven Mnuchin, has thus far refused to exercise that authority despite pressure from Democratic members of Congress and state attorneys general. So, what a surprise! You have the guy who ran One West. Now, this is a company that screwed countless people out of their homes. I mean, is it any surprise that they would prioritize creditors over struggling people? No, of course not. After all, prosecutors in California, when looking into One West, had uncovered evidence suggested of widespread misconduct when they performed a 1-year investigation. That investigation found over 1,000 legal violations in a small subsection of One West loans they were able to examine. And of course, they are well known for just doing the most ridiculous amount of foreclosures. In fact, one of them, we talked about this in the show, One West foreclosed on a woman over 27 cents, over a shortfall of that much. So, of course, Steven Mnuchin, who ran One West, would allow his buddies in debt collection to take this one-time payment that is supposed to be a payment to help people survive and give it right to his buddies. Of course. And by the way, Kamala Harris was the attorney general at the time, and the investigators gave her all this information about One West. Like, look at what this company's doing. And she's like, nah, don't really care. So that's Kamala Harris for you. She refused to do prosecutions and had gotten donations from Steven Mnuchin. So, yeah. Okay. Now, this has led to at least one state issuing protections for people, which is good. Massachusetts Attorney General Maura Healey recently issued guidance stating that the $1,200 payments are exempt from seizure or garnishment by creditors under Massachusetts law. The payments, she says, are supposed to help individuals and families put food on the table during the crisis, not enrich debt collectors. With this guidance, my office is putting the debt collection industry on notice that these payments are off limits. Well, that's one state. What about the others? What about the other states? Again, you've got millions of people that are depending on this money just to get it possibly snatched away from them to what? In some cases, pay overdraft fees from private banks or private loans or payday loans or other debts that people find themselves at this moment unable to pay. I mean, what this is gross. It's a callous thing to do, especially when the majority of the bill was already weighted towards corporations. I mean, this $1,200 direct payment was the very least that they could do. Now, the only other thing in the bill that really helps regular people, other than, of course, making sure that you can't evict renters during this crisis, where people, of course, have to stay home, is the actually pretty robust unemployment provisions that were fought for by Senator Bernie Sanders. So people that are getting that extra $600 a month in guaranteed unemployment benefits, you know how to thank. It was Bernie Sanders that fought for that. But this other little thing, even this is not protected at all. The little crumbs that the Trump administration, who, by the way, is Trump is literally signing this the checks with his own name, could get intercepted anyway. They don't even want them to have what little there is. It's gross. And it's going to have some devastating consequences, by the way. I mean, what do you think is going to happen when people are unable to feed their families? I'm not saying riots in the streets. I definitely don't want that. I want to avoid that. But in order to do so, well, we actually have to have support for working people. This administration doesn't want to do that. This administration wants to send people back to work as soon as possible, even if it means endangering people's lives, which it absolutely would. Other countries, by the way, are suspending mortgages, rents, credit card payments, all that stuff. And Canada, by the way, is giving people $2,000 a month until it's over. A lot of the payments have already went out. But the Trump administration, what they've done is they've done the opposite. Instead of taking care of the people, they made sure to take care of the corporations and the banks and the wealthy first. And then whatever crumbs are left can still get scooped up by the banks. At some point, I wonder how much the American people are going to take. How much more? I mean, look, I want to avoid riots, and I want to avoid all that bad stuff. And the way that I see doing it is the government actually taking the needs of the people into consideration. If they don't, I don't know what's going to happen, but I know it's not going to be good. And it appears that the Trump administration wants to keep going in that direction. Democrats have a much better plan. They have a plan that's more in line with Canada, giving people $2,000 a month. But it's all up to Republicans and Donald Trump to pass it. And I don't have a lot of faith that they will want to take this up. Hey guys, hopefully you enjoyed that free video. Now I'm going to have to ask you a favor. Between the demonetization and the YouTube algorithm messing around with view counts, etc., we're having a hard time adjusting to the new YouTube reality, which is where you guys come in. See, we have a Patreon, patreon.com/TYTNation, set up to help us rely on you guys, the viewers, instead of big corporate ads. Look, you know the show. You know I'm not in favor of big corporations anyway. So help us transition away from relying on the ad model to pay the bills and sign up to be a patron, patreon.com/TYTNation. That goes a long way to help us keep the lights on. And you guys will know that you're supporting independent, progressive media.